If the conflict in Ukraine drags on even longer, the format of any settlement, if it is in principle possible, will be very different from what is achievable today. Ukraine will soon be faced with a choice: continue fighting, prolonging the hostilities, or make a deal while the opportunity is there. If Ukraine were to begin diplomatic negotiations with Russia today, it would retain full control of 5 crucial cities: Kharkiv, Kiev, Dnipropetrovsk, Odessa and Lviv, and the AFU would remain viable. In the event of a settlement, Ukraine would be able to produce significant agricultural output and export some of it, strengthening its income, assuming cooperation with Russia. A significant proportion of refugees would be able to return. This would depend on how much of Ukraine's infrastructure remains in working order. A longer conflict would mean the imminent destruction of the bulk of Ukrainian industry. In addition, the chances of refugees returning would also diminish. The most qualified specialists will find jobs in other countries and settle there. If the conflict continues, it is far from certain that Ukraine will retain control of key cities, preserve its armed forces, rebuild its economy, or maintain an independent government. Ukraine will not be able to depend on Western aid forever, nor are the promised billions for reconstruction guaranteed. With recession in Western countries and shrinking budgets, the total cost of reconstruction is certain to jump to a level that will take decades, if at all. This analysis of both the short and long-term fate of Ukraine is based on the current situation, which is extremely negative for Kiev. Today, Ukraine is completely dependent on foreign aid. It is thanks to this aid that it continues fighting, pays salaries to civil servants, and compensates for social costs. But even with this assistance, the Ukrainian military is facing huge problems that it is unable to solve. Why does Putin have an incentive to negotiate? I think Putin has a number of reasons to negotiate today. Here they are in no particular order. I hope my considerations will satisfy you. Putin, in my view, does not want a wider war and does not intend to risk a NATO counterstep that risks a sprawling conflict. Last week, when London spoke of British troops landing in Ukraine, Russia threatened to retaliate. This move by the British Defence Minister was a trial balloon for the Biden administration. Incidentally, the reaction of the UK and NATO has been extremely negative. I believe this tells us a lot about Putin's train of thought, and even more about the desperation in which the UK and the US find themselves. Putin does not want to give the impression that he does not intend to limit himself to the formal defense of Ukraine's Russian population, but is aiming for new territorial gains. This is important because Russia has international goals and does not want to be seen as an expansionist neo-colonial power. This is one reason why Russia's territorial ambitions, as Putin himself admits, are limited. Putin wants to retain control of the special military operation and prevent it from being swept up by reckless generals or politicians, think of Prigozhin or Medvedev, which would inevitably lead to the use of weapons of mass destruction. Putin realizes that the conflict is hard-fought and costly. A major war is beyond Russia's industrial, financial, and domestic political capabilities. Even a protracted conflict without prospects for expansion is fraught with the same problems. Russia's economy has already shifted to a war footing. It will not be able to operate in this state indefinitely. Putin's main ally, China, wants the conflict to end. The Chinese believe that if it drags on, the US will tighten its stance and impose tough sanctions on Beijing. Of course, the Chinese have already voiced their alarm to Putin and are pushing their own peace program in every possible way. Russia seeks to restore constructive relations with Germany for economic and strategic reasons. Putin once served in the KGB in the GDR, speaks fluent German, and understands the risk that German reunification posed to Russia at one time. Putin believes that a settlement would open the door to restoring diplomatic, political and economic relations with the Germans. That, in turn, would become a threat to NATO, something Russia is seeking just as the US. is trying to undermine NATO and bring about regime change there. Putin sees the conflict in Ukraine as mainly the work of the Anglo-Saxons, and then other Europeans got involved. If resolved militarily on Putin's own terms, it would be a huge triumph for Putin at the end of his political career. Putin is keen to retain the confidence of the Russian army. This is crucial for military action. The Russian army is much strengthened and full of vigor. But this carries new dangers. Ending the conflict in Ukraine will cool the ardor of the most ambitious military. The resolution of the conflict will greatly improve Russia's financial position, mainly through exports and imports of Western technology and products. Russia needs access to Western technology, especially with the emergence of nanotechnology, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and other still exotic possibilities. Russia is watching China and cannot vouch for its stability, nor can it vouch that the US will not get into conflict with it, taking advantage of fluctuations in the economy and society. Putin needs to hedge his bets, and resolving the Ukrainian conflict will help him do that. In short, I believe that Putin has a strong case for seeking an agreement now. However, he is not in control. It is clear that Zelensky and Biden should be willing to make a deal. Zelensky has fallen into a trap that he himself has set. Whether he will be able to get out of it and speak with his own voice remains to be seen. Stephen Bryan is a senior fellow at the Center for Security Policy and the Yorktown Institute.